Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are live on a Thursday night, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. We are so glad to be live on a Thursday night. Thank you so much for making us a part of your lovely evening here. We are live on all platforms, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Twitch, X, IG, and TikTok is where you can like, follow, and subscribe and keep you up to date on future and past shows. My good friend Hammer from Hammer's House is going to be joining us here on the program. Got a lot to talk about from here because my phone has been blowing up all day long. The last few days, NFL moves. We're almost there to free agency, but NHL trade deadline is around the corner. It felt like yesterday and today it's been going off. Lots of big-time moves, but the actual deadline is tomorrow. I'm excited about it, and so much to come from here. But I do want to start with this before we let on our great guest from here. But, man, I know a lot of people are surprised, and they're panicking, and they're like, oh, my God, these safeties and corners, they're getting released. There's the cap strain is real. Listen, don't panic. Don't panic. This is actually fantastic. This is why we love the NFL. We get content every single day because there's moves to be made, and we're not even at free agency. It starts next week. And so people that are wondering why is this happening is the real truth behind it all is the salary cap strain is very much real for some teams. It's real for Buffalo. It's real for Denver. It's real for a lot of different teams. But here's what you got to understand in this league. This league in the last few years has pivoted to offense. And you all realize that. The second the Chiefs, it was the year to beat them. And they went back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Because it doesn't matter to them. If they've got Patrick Mahomes and they've got Andy Reid, that is all they need. But as far as corners and safeties, it is very hard to have a legitimate corner and a legitimate safety in this league nowadays because most of them are transitioning to wide receivers out of high school. It ain't even college. They're transitioning to wide receivers in high school. That's why you don't get a whole lot of them. I feel like for legitimate corners, we've got Sauce Gardner and we got Christian Gonzalez. That's what it feels like. We've got solid corners from there. But as far as safeties, some of them are kind of rushing out of their prime, or some of them are not really kind of catching up to the speed. And it happens. And sometimes it's defensive schematics. But the thing about this is, and I also saw one of the posts, you want to know how much money lots of teams pretty much saved after giving up all these corners and safeties. $103 million is what they saved. That's getting rid of Jamal Adams. That's getting rid of Jordan Poyer. That's getting rid of Tre'Davious White. And it's also getting rid of Justin Simmons. Yeah, that's how much they saved. And so the thing about it is, if you're Buffalo and you're the Broncos, I mean, yeah, this hurts. But at the same time, you've got Josh Allen you're paying for his contract. You're now dealing with dead cap money in Denver. Thanks a lot to Russell Wilson for $85 million you got to eat up. And this is where a lot of these star players, you're going to have to trade. You're going to have to get rid of some players. I like Justin Simmons. I mean, I think he's a great player. But this is what happens when teams get over the cap. You got to sacrifice. That's what it takes. I mean, this is also part of the reason Kansas City didn't even have big-time dynamic wide receivers because they know they got to pay Patrick Mahomes, but they also got to end up giving contract extensions for Travis Kelce or Chris Jones. Lots of teams are starting to understand this. But I will tell you this, it's corners and safeties galore. And for many teams that need to upgrade defense, there's many of them that do. Atlanta is going to try to upgrade defense because they've got a really good offense. They need a quarterback. And they're going to strengthen up their offensive line. But I love their pieces. So there are some teams that are on the list that could use quality defensive players. The Raiders even included. They could use some really good quality defensive players because they're starting to revamp. They're starting to rejuice. We got to figure out who's going to be the quarterback behind the helm. But I think Antonio Pierce as a head coach, why wouldn't he love a couple of these quality defensive players? And these are guys that are going to be willing to play day in, day out. So I think it's a great day for some teams that are going to need upgrades at defense, as long as the contract really does, speak for itself. But this happens for some teams. When you get into these big, long-term contracts, these are the sacrifices. And so I don't want people to panic. I know Buffalo and Denver are panicking, especially Denver, because I've been hearing all around in Mile High Sports out here in Denver, it's been bonkers. But this is what happens. They're all pointing the finger at Russ. I'll get into that a little bit more here in just about a few moments. But great guest of mine, great friend of mine. And I mean, absolutely loved, the grind and the come up that he has been for the last few years. And he's already making his name known in the Raiders circle. And man, he's just continuing to continuously grind, and he's continuously making a name for himself. So joining me, my good friend, Hammer of Hammer's House, joining us here on the show. I mean, it's kind of safe to say. I mean, as soon as my phone kept blowing up all the last 2 days, I've been dealing with hockey, and now NFL is starting to barge on in. This is safeties, corners galore, this free agency. Am I right?
Definitely is. It's crazy too, because some of the names that have been dropped, and there's one now that there's reports coming out that the Raiders seem to be interested in former Washington Commanders cornerback Kendall Fuller. I spoke about Fuller a little over a week ago, saying in regards to what the market is for a lot of these top tier corners, these guys are going to be looking at 20+ million. Now we do see that Jalen Johnson just got an extension earlier today. 4-year, $76 million deal, which is actually roughly the average is just a little bit under what the franchise tag was. It's going to be about $19 million a year. I still think for a guy of Kendall Fuller's caliber, a guy that's been in the league for quite some time, he was a defensive captain for Washington. He's looking probably something like around the ballpark of like maybe $14 million on average, which I'm here for. We definitely need another corner on the opposite side of Jack Jones. Another guy to solidify that defensive back room. He's definitely the guy right now. Jalen Johnson was the guy that we were thinking about. Hey, he could be a free agent, but we kind of knew that he was going to end up being tagged. You got L'Jarius Sneed right now, who was franchise tagged, but was granted permission to seek a trade back in February. And that's realistically due to Kansas City's cap problems and them trying to do anything to extend Chris Jones. But I don't think Sneed is a guy that we need. I don't think he's a guy that a lot of Raider Nation wants right now, but a guy of Kendall Fuller's caliber, I would absolutely love to have here for 2, maybe 3 years.
I mean, I could tell you this. I mean, a lot of teams that are going to need, quality corners and quality safeties. I mean, Jordan Poyer and Justin Simmons. These are some quality guys. They're not out of their primes just yet. I think you could get solid 2-3 years left out of them until they're basically, that's it. But I mean, Tre'Davious White is a very good caliber corner, but he has had a history of injuries lately, and so that's kind of a scare. So I mean, these guys could go for 2-3 year extensions, but at the same time, it's kind of hard. And it's like I made my point earlier. I mean, these are kids that are transitioning to wide receiver in high school. It ain't even college. They don't even want to play corners, and that's why it's so hard finding a really solid man-to-man corner or even just a cover safety for all that matter, because you just need somebody that's going to float in the backfield.
Well,
So
we know the ongoing trend now as it stands in the NFL. A lot of these guys being taken via the draft are guys that have been converted a lot more recently because of how much more pass friendly the league is. You have these guys that played safety in college and then they get drafted and they're transitioning to the linebacker position. Like look at Devon Diablo. That's one perfect example. And he's done a pretty solid job the few years that he's been with us so far. And I think he can only get better, especially going into his third season under Patrick Graham's defensive scheme, a defensive scheme that is now wide open for him to call and handle however he wants.
Yep, absolutely. Well, since we're on that subject, let's talk Raiders because that's what we're here for tonight, right? Okay, so let's start with the coach. And I think Antonio Pierce, I love him. I loved him as a player, and I absolutely love his mentality as a coach. I think this was the right move for the Raiders to do this because the fact that, number one, he's bringing the attitude back that the Raiders have long been dying for the last few years. They've kind of said to themselves, this coordinator, this, smart, innovative stuff, this crap doesn't work. It doesn't work. The Patriot way didn't work. Antonio Pierce gives me a different vibe because players are invested in playing for him. I mean, you saw from the defense when he came in as an interim coach, opponents' averages were only scoring 16 points or less. Yep. So that means something from here. So as someone who's covered the Raiders for a very long time, I think Antonio Pierce really, really does kind of show that intimidation factor, even in not just the division, but even for the AFC as a whole. I think this success rate, from your opinion, I think this is definitely one that we could see the Raiders be a serious problem for like 5+ years.
And I'm really hoping that is the case. Look, what he did taking over as their interim head coach, couldn't ask for better. To finish the division, in the division anyways, 3-1 against our opponents towards the tail end of the season. Broncos still have yet to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. We beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead on Christmas Day, 2 defensive touchdowns. You couldn't write it up any better. Antonio Pierce's energy, his leadership, it's clear as day that this is what this team needs right now. He's definitely a leader among men. He's a leader in that locker room. He was a proven leader during his time in the NFL. He has the coaching experience. He succeeded high school, college, and now you got your shot as a head coach at the ultimate level in the NFL. And the guys that they've brought in, Tom Telesco is a GM, and we had that conversation the day it happened. Marvin Lewis, Joe Philbin, guys that have years of head coaching experience. A guy in Joe Philbin that has, not Joe Philbin, Luke Getsy that had previous experience with Devontae Adams. Like, I'm here for it. I'm incredibly excited to see what we do. We're less than a week away from free agency. You already hear the rumblings, the moves already. I thought the tampering period started Monday, but you got these guys signing left and right already, which is good. The rumor mill is running to no end right now. We know that, like, I see a lot of people in my chat. Salutes to the nation in here right now. Appreciate each and every single one of y'all. We've had our talks about free agency and guys that we would like to have here. I'm still highly under the belief as it stands right now. Christian Wilkins is a guy that we could end up getting. Justin Matabuki was franchise tag, so that took us out of the running for that. Leonard Williams is still out there. Chris Jones, we don't know what he's going to be asking. Realistically, his annual average is going to be roughly in the 30 million plus ballpark. I don't even know if KC can afford that right now unless they do some restructuring and a couple more releases here and there, or even are able to find a trade partner for L'Jarius Sneed. Quarterback is our main priority right now as well as we look forward to the draft. You hear these other quarterbacks that are free agents or could be on the trade. Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins. There's other quarterbacks that are out there that I don't even care to mention because they're not starting quarterbacks and they're not guys that we want here. But anything is possible right now. Again, less than a week away from the start of the new league year and the free agency and trading period. I'm excited to see the type of moves as long as they do it the right way, starting both offensive line and defensive line.
And I'm so glad you brought this up because this is what I was going to transition next to, because quarterback, yes, is a big priority for the Raiders because you're looking for the next big thing in the next few years. So one I want to touch upon, and I know that it's been a topic everybody just can't seem to stop talking about. And you pointed one thing out on a different podcast as well. Russell Wilson. So he gets released by the Broncos. And I mean, I live here in Denver. Everybody's tired of him. They're done. And so they got to swallow the $85 million cap. People believed that Russell Wilson could work in Vegas. I'm on the opposite because I feel like Russ is too optimistic and he's a spiritual guy. That with Antonio Pierce is not a great fit because Pierce has an attitude. The Raiders have an attitude. And I feel like Russ, you bring that kind of optimism. I mean, look, his wife Sierra, she's getting a slam dunk because you live in Vegas. You're going to get deals. You're going to get so much opportunities. You live in Vegas. But as far as for Russ, I don't really see that working. And I think the Raiders realize that even for a name like that, they don't have time for optimistics. They need somebody that's going to, at the very least, fit in with this. So let's talk Russ first. I'm on the opposite. I don't believe he's a better fit for the Raiders. 4 teams I pointed out. Pittsburgh's my number 1. Then there's Atlanta, Minnesota, and Washington. And Washington, he could be a starting quarterback if they're very unsure of that number 2 pick. But the other 2, that's unless if Russ really has shaped himself to be a bridge quarterback. What was running through your guys' minds the second the news broke out about Russ?
I started laughing because we knew it was going to happen anyways. That relationship with Sean Payton just soured incredibly quickly, more or less from the time Sean Payton stepped his foot through the facilities in Denver.
Yeah.
As it stands right now, we all know that they are taking a dead cap hit of $85 million. Now, Russell Wilson can take a league vet minimum for 1.2 this season, while the Broncos pay the other $40 million. Cool. Yes, the one concern I have right now is how his presence would be in the Raiders locker room. Now, we know that we're looking for a quarterback of the future. For us, Russell Wilson's not the quarterback of the future, but I wouldn't mind the idea of signing Russell Wilson on that 1 year. Whatever quarterback we draft, let him learn behind Russell Wilson for a year and see what the possibilities are. But like I said, I'm not sure. I'm not really easy about this in regards to what his presence would bring into Antonio Pierce's locker room.
Yeah, and that's why I'm just like, because I know Antonio Pierce, much like, Sean Payton, they're very passionate and they're very aggressive guys because they have a system that they have in place that works. And so if the guy does not fit and does not quite gel with this system, you're going to hear an earful. And I mean, Sean Payton, I don't think it's a wrong thing from this, but I think he looked at that front office and said, look, you created this mess. I came in here to try to fix it. And this is what I have to inherit with. So now he's gone. He's going to start a new thing. But I think the Raiders, yeah, you're right about that because optimism only goes so far until you're overly optimistic and now you can't gel with the players, you can't gel with the coach, and you're more individualized than anything else. So that now transitions to the draft because at the bottom half of the hour, I'm going to have my top 10 draftees here. It's going to be fun and it's going to be exciting. So, quarterbacks. We spoke about this very briefly for the time that we had because lots of big names that we know that are up out there. Whatever Chicago's going to do, I feel like it's going to lean, they're going to draft Caleb Williams. Then there's Drake May. Drake May, I'm a little skeptical of because of the reasons of if you don't have a strong left tackle, that's going to spell, that might be kind of crucial for me.
Yeah.
But this draft's loaded. This draft's loaded with tackles, it's loaded with quarterbacks, and it's loaded with receivers. But there also are other quarterbacks that we've seen in the combine who really do work. I feel like, as looking at the Raiders, I think Jaden Daniels works, but I've said it before. I think that's a risk that I'm not sure if the Raiders are worth taking because we remember what happened the last LSU quarterback they took. But there's J.J. McCarthy, there's Bo Nix. How do you kind of see this kind of playing out? And in your perspective, who do you think really does fit the bill as a potential future for the Raiders for the next 10 years?
Right now, it's incredibly tough to say. I really don't think I heard anything about Drake May throughout the combine last weekend. So right now, as it stands for me, I'm not sure exactly where I would even remotely try to rank Drake May. And at the same time, I'm cautious about him for the simple fact, and I've said this to a few people, more off air than anything. Another first-round draft pick coming out of a school in the Carolinas. The last time we saw that was Daniel Jones, the New York Football Giants, in their 7th overall pick. They took Daniel Jones out of Duke, which to this day, I still scratch my head like, who the hell drafts a quarterback in the first round out of Duke? And don't use the excuse, oh, he went to Eli Manning's passing camp, because clearly that doesn't mean a damn thing. I'm looking at it from the standpoint that Jaden Daniels already has that prior relationship with Antonio Pierce. I think that it would be beneficial for us, especially with the offensive pieces in regards to the weapons we have and our offensive coaching staff, of having a guy of Jaden Daniels' caliber. But we're going to have to move heaven and earth, because realistically right now, I'm looking at Jaden Daniels potentially being the 2nd overall pick in this draft. And what are the Commanders going to ask from us for that pick? If we don't go that route, we still need to find a way to move up, because there's other teams in front of us that are looking for quarterbacks as well. You have Atlanta. There's talks about the Giants potentially looking to get a quarterback. You have the Broncos, who are ahead of us as well. Minnesota's looking for a quarterback. I think the next best quarterback that we could potentially get would be J.J. McCarthy. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at it from maybe 1 to 5 right now. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Drake May, and then it's a toss-up between Michael Penix and Bo Nix.
That's not a bad list. And honestly, and I'm going to talk about J.J. McCarthy here in a bit, but because the thing I watched about J.J. McCarthy, and a lot of people, media guys, some of them that I've heard on shows, they're not sold on J.J. McCarthy. But here's my defense. J.J. McCarthy is coming off of a legendary coach in Jim Harbaugh, who's now on the Chargers. So he's coming off of one coach that if you fit him to a Raiders, a Vikings, but maybe an Atlanta, or maybe even a Denver culture, you know who you're going to get. And he's got a winning mentality. And this is the other thing. If you saw from the combine, when he threw 62 miles an hour, that tells me he's capable of throwing balls in tight windows. So even if, receivers get contested, he's still able to make it just like that. But he's also capable of even throwing the deep ball, but he's very smart into when he has to use it. But he even mentioned this, of many wide receivers he would love to throw to. Devontae Adams' name got thrown out there. And so it's you think of that relationship and you start envisioning a lot about that. That's the kind of the vibe that the Raiders really do need, is that they're not looking for the overly special, like, a godsend quarterback. They want to find a quarterback who's capable of winning and builds a winning culture along with what AP is bringing to the table. And so I think honestly, like, looking at the Raiders, this is an interesting situation. And but the other thing is too, and I was glad you called me on this on your show when it came to when Tom Telesco got hired. So I've said this for many reasons. I don't believe this was a bad hiring for the Raiders because, first of all, when was the last time we ever had a competent GM in the Raiders office in the last 20 years? And I think this is a good thing because he's coming off of years. He's responsible for drafting, Justin Herbert. He's responsible for drafting Keenan Allen and Joey Bosa and a bunch of players. He's capable of getting quality in the building. I know a lot of people, recency bias, Quentin Johnson didn't work, but I can't condemn him because it's his rookie year. So looking into this in the bigger picture, because free agency and draft are coming up around the corner, what's the mentality in the building with having Tom Telesco there? Because I know he loves AP, and I think he is filtering a lot of what Antonio Pierce is looking for and what they're going to have to expect, because there's Josh Jacobs news that's out there. What's going to be the focus coming in next week for the Raiders?
Look, AP has said it countless times that Josh Jacobs is the heart and soul of that offense, and he wants to have an offense that has a solid run game. Now, talking about McCarthy, and somebody said it in the chat. Shout out to Bourbon. Everyone says JJ McCarthy was successful because of good defense and heavy run game. What does AP want to do? That's exactly what he wants to do. So a guy like JJ McCarthy, a guy who's already has the pro scheme under his belt under Jim Harbaugh, a former quarterback as well, a guy that likes to compete, a guy that has a solid arm. I don't see why, if we're not able to get Jaden Daniels, that we don't take JJ McCarthy. Now, we do need to sign Josh Jacobs, and I've been shouting for this even since last year before he was tagged. Hashtag pay JJ, hashtag pay baby beast mode. Get him on a 3-year deal. Let him finish his career with the Raiders. And then again, free agency, offensive line. I still would really love to have Robert Hunt, the offensive guard from the Dolphins here. Defensively, we have to get one of these dogs on the interior D line. We need another corner. I'm staying away from linebackers. Linebackers, I'd much rather get a young buck in this draft, but it's going to be focused on the trenches first and foremost and getting our quarterback of the future, or a quarterback that will lead us into playoff contention year in, year out and get us to a Super Bowl finally.
Yeah, and like I said, I think this Raiders culture is very strong. I mean, you and I both know that with how this team, and it's been a long time coming, because for years and years and years, it always seemed like it's another year that is just waiting to disappoint them. But I think a lot of things are going to start to change. They finally realized you get the attitude in the building, you get the right guy who's a player's guy. And hey, it worked for Houston. The second, DeMeco Ryans came in the building and CJ Stroud started going off. And Antonio Pierce is like, why can't that be us? Yep. So it's the right mentality and your outlook on this, because the AFC West, it's brewing. It is brewing big time, because now, the Chiefs are going to be fresh off of a back-to-back Super Bowl years. You got the Chargers, who are finally starting to open the paychecks and getting the right coach in the building. But then Denver with Sean Payton, they've got to work this thing out. So this has to be very important for the Raiders moving forward for the next few years if they want it, not just getting into the playoffs, but to show that they can compete in a heavy division like the AFC West.
Absolutely. And like you stated, like with the AFC West, again, Broncos are in hell right now. How are they going to dig themselves out of that hole? What moves are they going to be making next week? Chiefs, again, slight cap problems, not as bad, but still slight cap problems. What are they going to do? Then again, your Chargers have a new head coach, Sharon Jim Harbaugh, still has the weapons that they had the last couple of years. Justin Herbert should be back and healthy. What are they going to do? Is Khalil Mack going to be back there? Does Joey Bosa want to stay there? Does he want to be traded? I think you guys are what, 40 million over the cap right now?
We're actually right now, as it stands, we're 19 million over the cap because of a few reasons. We let go, the Chargers let go of Eric Kendricks. They are possibly looking into releasing Mike Williams. And there is also rumors that potentially the 49ers could be a suitor for Joey Bosa. I kind of saw that coming, and I'm like, yeah. So, but here's the thing. Let him go. Let him go. Because injuries have racked up. He's not mentally invested, which is not what Jim Harbaugh wants. Jim Harbaugh wants dogs. And especially now with Joe Ortiz in the building as a new GM, he's going to provide that. He comes from a pedigree of Baltimore Ravens dogs that are out there that he's going to want to bring in the building. My hope is, I'm crossing my fingers, Khalil Mack stays. Get me 2 years. That's all I ask is 2 years because he's responsible for Thule's build. Because then that means we can set this year and then go and because next year it's going to be really good on edge rushers. So I could get an edge rusher in the draft next year, have that last year and say, thank you for your services, Khalil Mack. Go on with the rest of your career. And then they're set for success. So that's what it kind of feels like to me. But then also, Keenan Allen is going to retire. He's going to retire a Charger. There is no question, no doubt in my mind. He will be a Charger for life. And the offensive line is going to be really good. But thank you to Corey Linsley for at the very least shedding $10 million off of his contract because I know he's going to medically retire. I mean, I feel bad for the guy. I hope the best for his retirement, but that is hard to lose. But I'm optimistic because now the Bills released Mitch Morse. So which means if you're going to give me a 2-year contract for a veteran center and maybe potentially draft one to build him up, there's many, possibilities for this. So yeah, this AFC West is going to be competitive. But again, we're also looking at what is Kansas City going to do? They were on this whole train of, they should get Mike Evans. They should get Mike Evans. I said that is very hard for Mike Evans to leave Tampa after post Tom Brady, and you won the division. He's going to be a Buccaneer for life. That's why I was like, that is very hard to steer him away.
Oh, well, Mike, look, I kind of saw that coming. And again, when it comes to that contract that he just got, he could have gotten a hell of a lot more from any other team that was interested in him. We had the talks about KC, New England, maybe even Houston. I think that they did this. I think this was Tampa's plan to try to get Baker Mayfield to go back for at least 1, maybe 2 years.
I'd say 2 years, honestly, for Baker Mayfield. And I had former D lineman James Canada talk about this because he knows the organization. He's played for this organization. I mean, hell, he still keeps up with Warren Sapp. And he said it that Mike Evans was meant to be a Buccaneer for life. And the fact that, the second Tom Brady came in to the building, that changed the mentality of the culture because it used to be very laxed and it used to be nice to be up in South Beach. There's no pressure. You are your own player. But there are expectations. There are some young cats that, he's even told me when they were in private camps, Derek Brooks took him out and showed him like the rookies and the second-year guys training hard because they may go after your position. You never know. And so that's where it was like you had to work hard. You had to grind. You had to get yourself in the best shape of your life. And so by that point, Mike Evans in the first 10 years, 1,000 receiving yards, and you've got a Super Bowl on your belt, and post Tom Brady with a defensive coach and a quarterback people were so questionable about, puts a comeback player of the year performance, and you win a division in a really, really wonky NFC South. That's hard to leave.
I was incredibly nervous. Not nervous, but like going into last season, seeing the NFC South, like I really thought that it was going to be the laughing stock of the league with that division. That division, it just didn't feel like there was a quarterback that really stood out. It just seemed like the division was incredibly weak. And to see Tampa do what they did, get into the playoffs, I was blown away by that. And look, if they kind of retool what they did, you might see them fighting again in that division. I think going into this coming season for them, you're probably going to see a battle between Tampa and Atlanta, especially if Atlanta gets the quarterback that they need, whether it being Kirk Cousins or even Justin Fields, because they have a lot of weapons on offense as well.
And it's funny you say that because my outlook from the beginning of the season, I thought this was Derek Carr's year to win a division. And yet not even that. He couldn't do it. I was like, I mean, the Raiders proved a point from there. I felt like that was the year to win the division, and you failed and miserably. But I think it felt like it was 50, 60, 40%, where it was Dennis Allen, a defensive coach, but then also Derek Carr not getting rid of the skeletons in his closet. That's what it kind of felt like last year was for the Saints. It was disappointing. Yes, injuries riddled up, but that was no excuse. And I'm like, this is a terrible division. You got Atlanta rebuilding. You got Carolina that's a dumpster fire, and Tampa that was questionable, and yet Baker Mayfield pulled this up. You let Baker Mayfield prove to himself he's a better quarterback than you in the division. That's embarrassing. I'm like,
and it gets more embarrassing for New Orleans as John Gruden's been in that facility recently. And they have a special consultant that apparently is going to help with the upcoming draft in former Raiders GM Dave Ziegler.
Oh, good Lord.
Doesn't add up. Good luck with that.
Yeah, this is going to be weird. Well, final thoughts up on it before letting you go, because I mean, we talk for literally hours and hours at a time, man. It don't matter, but I'm excited for this NFL draft because I think this year it's loaded on offense. And this is usually what it is. It's like every 2 years it's offense, and every 2 years it's defense. This year we've got tackles, we've got quarterbacks, and we got wide receivers. So thinking of this, and outside of what the Raiders' needs are, is there a draft prospect that you've paid attention to, watched film, even watching, the combine, that you think, dude, this guy is going to surprise a lot of people in this league? Is there anyone you thought of in mind?
Not from watching the combine, but there were guys, and call me biased, call me a Longhorn homer. But some of these guys out of Texas, they have a very deep class, and a receiver in Adonai Mitchell, Jonathan Brooks, I still believe, regardless of tearing his ACL at the end of the season, I still believe he's going to be the first running back off of the board. I think he should be ready probably by like anywhere between week 6 and week 8. The quarterback class is crazy. I'm projecting that we're going to see, and this is going to be a shock to a lot of people, 10, maybe 11 receivers off the board in the first round alone. These guys are incredibly talented, and they're all over the place. Like, we've talked about Xavier Worthy breaking that 40 time, the 4.21, and somebody in the chat said, like, they think that KC is going to reach with that last pick in the first round. And I'm telling you guys, I hope to God that doesn't happen, because that speed is insane. And I know some people have talked about him having issues with his hands. His last year, not this past season, because he was dealing with injuries a lot, but the season before, he was pretty damn solid. He's a guy that I really do not want to see in KC. He's really a guy I don't want to see in our division at all.
Yeah, no, and I will tell you this, because the first thing that came to mind when I saw Xavier Worthy break that record is this. Okay, people are falling in love with the speed. We could all fall in love with the speed. Yeah. But look at what happened with John Ross. John Ross came in this league and yet not highly productive in Cincinnati. And that's where I'm just like, look, speed is one thing, but if we could have a Tyreek Hill in every organization. It would be insane. But sometimes it does translate when you come out of college and you go into the NFL, because the NFL, it stands for not for long, because here's the thing, you can come in there and you may not last for long. So that's where you got to come in, you got to work, you got to prove to people why you belong in this league.
It's just it's crazy, because I'm looking at the breakdown now of Xavier Worthy's stats with his target to receptions, and it is a little scary. Like this past season, 119 targets, 75 yards. Last season, 113 targets, 59 receptions. 103 targets in 2021, 62 receptions. This past season was his best with 1,014 yards, 5 touchdowns. The year before, 757, 8. And then in 2021, 981 for 12 touchdowns. His average isn't bad. It's always in double digits. Realistically, the average is probably like around 13 yards a reception. But again, the hands is the one thing that would be a huge concern, especially if he's being pressed up on in man coverage. Like, he's one of those guys that you could jam up, and you got that strength. You can put him on his back real quick.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'll tell you what, my guy that I'm paying attention to, that I honestly think he's going to be this year's Tariq Woolen coming out of the draft, is Quinion Mitchell. I think that kid is a ball hawk. I've watched his film at Toledo, and a lot of people don't believe it because of one thing is, yes, I get it. He comes from a program like Toledo. But here's the thing you got to understand is that look at where Tariq Woolen came from. Okay, he came from a small school too, but he's shown he's got ball hawk skills, and he's shown that he is a offensive threat. And where he disrupts, he's a big-time wide receiver disruptor, and he's also somebody that is going to put pressure on. I feel like Quinion Mitchell could do the same, because the year before this past year, he had 5 interceptions. And on top of all that, his coverage rate was nuts. That's why I'm just like, people that want to look at an under-radar player, I think it's going to be that kid. I mean, I've got him in my top 10. I think he's going to be something special, going to be something interesting. I'll tell you what, though, man, look out for Tennessee. I'm feeling a little bit of some volunteers out there in the draft this year that might be interesting to kind of keep my eyes on.
I hope you're not talking about Joe Milton.
No, I'm thinking.
Did you see the tape on? Did you see the tape today on Quinion Mitchell in the weight room?
Yeah,
squatting 505 pounds. This kid is 6 foot, 196 pounds, man. Like, he definitely was a guy that showed up and showed out at the combine. He's definitely probably going to be, I have a feeling he's probably going to be maybe the second, maybe the third corner off the board.
I mean, yeah, because he's either going to be a late first rounder. I mean, if he ends up in the beginning of the second round, I would not be surprised for a few reasons. But I do think he's got quality, corner stuff that you will need. This is what we had from last year when we talked about Christian Gonzalez, because I thought that was a solid corner that New England picked up, and this is going to be another one that I feel like could be very, very solid coming up out of the draft. But lots to really break down from here. We're just so busy with all this stuff. But I do want your quick thought. A little bit of Major League Baseball. Are you outraged by the unis lately? Because I've asked so many people about this. This is ridiculous. You're a $1 billion company in Nike. How do you even say that this is acceptable? It's one thing if you told me these are meant for spring training, but if these roll out by opening day, you know how furious Flushing is going to be if you've got Pete Alonso wearing this stuff. You
won't see me getting a custom jersey this season. That's for damn sure. Like, I watched a couple of games. I actually was watching a Mets spring training game. I think it was last weekend, and they were talking about it. And I'm looking at the jerseys, and I'm like, these shits look like little league jerseys. Like, do you see how small the names are on the back? Like, what are we doing? Like, yeah, no. Nike messed up, and they messed up big time. They better adjust that quickly.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because if you got see-through pants that I could literally see like just the bottom of the jersey and all that on the tails, this is not what we paid for. And it's not just fans that are outraged; players are outraged. I get
Yep.
it if you want comfortability, but good God, this is no excuse. Nike's $1 billion company. You got deals with NBA and NFL. How do you not have enough to literally fix this? I mean, that's outrageous. Like, so
Whoever's idea it was, look, you had one job. I'm gonna leave it at that.
yeah, you did. That's why I was like, why Fanatics? I would have just went back to Majestic. That's really all that I would have went back to. But appreciate you, man. Always bringing up the best stuff, man. This is why I absolutely love bringing Hammer up onto the show. Where could people find your house when it comes to everything Raider content?
Raider Nation News today on YouTube. We're on that road to 9K. I'm not even sure where we're at right now. The grind is continuing. We will be live next week. I think I might be joined by Joe Arrigo of Franchise Sports Media. For those that watched on Monday, it was a phenomenal show, and a lot of you guys really enjoyed the debates and the back and forth that we had with that show. So we'll probably do something. I think I'm going to have him on my channel either Monday or Tuesday, maybe Tuesday, and we'll do a little talk of the tampering period. And then I will be on his channel on Wednesday to start of the new league year. And, we'll keep messing around with some mock drafts here and there. I might try to get a show in at some point this weekend as well. But Raider Nation News today on YouTube. And, guys, I appreciate all your support. And if you haven't subscribed, I don't know what you're waiting for, but come on over. It doesn't cost you a thing. Jake, as always, man, love you, brother. And thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, any place, and anywhere, man. It's always fun and exciting. Listen, I told myself this new year, I am hoping I make my way to New Orleans this year, because that is my big time goal, because Media Row is calling for us, man. That's why I'm like being up out there in New Orleans, having the best time of our lives. That's what I'm shooting for. And we've got news everywhere. Like, this is why we love the NFL. This is why we love how much content it puts out every single day. And you've been making the biggest moves, man. The content has been spectacular. Always keeping it up, man. Keeping it 100%. Appreciate everybody as well in Raider Nation, because you guys have been very loyal and very faithful and very strong. I will not say I'm intimidated, but I respect the culture, man. That's all I'm going to leave from there. But
you always find your way into the black hole and hang out with us. So, you're always welcome at any time. You're family, man. I love you to death. And again, thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Take care of yourself, man. We'll see you soon.
Definitely.
Yeah, guys. I mean, the thing I look at with Russell Wilson for a few reasons is I just, people think he doesn't have a market. I would disagree, because for a few reasons, and we'll get into this. So Russell Wilson gets cut by the Broncos. Broncos have to eat $85 million like in dead cap. Okay. That is the price you pay when you, first of all, make a big trade, which now it worked for Seattle, because Seattle got so many quality players, and they again, they really compensated for that. And Denver, not even hitting the field yet. But Russell gets an extension for that much. I think it was a big mistake. I think it was a big mistake all around the board, and this is what they're paying the price for. So my big thing with Russell Wilson is there's 4 destinations in mind that are on the top of my head. My favorite is definitely Pittsburgh. I think the Steelers feels right, because, first of all, you are not going to settle for mediocrity at quarterback. I'm sorry, but you're not, especially when you're coming off of a year where this is Lamar's second MVP year. You got Joe Burrow, who went to a Super Bowl, and Cleveland's defense with Myles Garrett. And all that they got to get is they got to get Deshaun Watson right. That's it. So Russell Wilson is probably the only best thing that could happen for Pittsburgh. And they don't need much. They already have a lot of players. They're great at skills positions. Okay, all they need is to fix that offensive line. Defense, you can acquire them in the draft. That's not a problem. But what I do have issues with is mediocrity. I like Kenny Pickett, but he's shown he cannot overcome the overhaul of what the AFC North does. So I think, to me personally, Russell feels like a better fit. Then there's Washington, Atlanta, and Minnesota. But Atlanta and Minnesota feel like bridge opportunities because Atlanta's going to want a quarterback for the next 10 years. And so will Minnesota. Because Minnesota, you got to give some promise to Justin Jefferson. And you're not paying Jordan Addison anything. You have TJ Hawkinson's contract, but you also need a running back. So Minnesota could feel like a good fit, but I feel like that if anything, I would love to see JJ McCarthy in Minnesota. I would love to see Bo Nix in Minnesota. But I feel like Atlanta would be the same way because, first of all, their offensive line got much better last season. Plus, they've got some offensive weapons. They could go and get another wide receiver, and they're going to need more defensive pieces. And this feels like it's a younger, stronger team that is primed for a bigger calling in the NFC South next year. I mean, I really like the Raheem Morris hiring. It's familiarity. Plus, I also love the Zach Robinson hire as an offensive coordinator. I think it's a better fit. It's a better calling. But I feel like Michael Penix would be a much better fit in Atlanta. I would. They had Michael Vick at one point. What makes you think that Penix would not work in this system? Zach Robinson's smart enough. He will work with his mechanics. But if you bring Russell into the building, this is what it is. He's going to be a bridge quarterback. But Washington is interesting because they have the number 2 pick in the draft. Lots of skepticism there. And Russell, because it's a new ownership, new GM, you already got weapons outside of tight end. So because they're going to need a better productive tight end. But they got receivers. Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. I like those guys. They could probably get another one for the slot position. But they need defense big time. This is why they hired Dan Quinn. Defensive coach, knows the defensive culture. And I think Russell, it doesn't feel like there's any pressure in the NFC East. I mean, yeah, you got Philly, you got Dallas, but it doesn't seem very pressurizing. I mean, especially when you're trying to give a better look for the Washington Commanders, I feel like it could work. Russell in Washington or Pittsburgh would be a starter. Atlanta and Minnesota would feel a lot more like it's a bridge opportunity. That's what it would feel like to me. So, lots of good stuff. Love it every time when Hammer comes up onto the show, man. And appreciate everybody in Raider Nation. Like I said, they're diehard. They are diehard. They're very invested, much like what Antonio Pierce brings into the building. He's invested. Lots of these guys are invested, so it'll be interesting to see how the draft and the free agency really, really looks for them. Good stuff. We're going to take a slight break from here, but when we do come back, our top 10 in the NFL draft, draftees. Now, again, these are guys that I've paid attention to from their film, the combine, and these are not like, listen, I know with the draftees that I'm going to get from the top rounds. This is not my mock draft for many people to realize. I will have a mock draft on this show. I'll probably have about 2, maybe 3 of them. But this specifically is the draftees I would look out for here in the draft. So, all right, you guys have heard me talk about this all the time, but BetUS is the most trustworthy sports betting book in the market. BetUS, you cannot go wrong for when you put $50 in your deposit down or more. 200% bonus with 30 risk-free bets. BetUS has been doing this thing for 30 years. Love being a partner with them. I think they bring the best stuff, especially the sportsbook. If you haven't checked the sportsbook, it's great, especially with NBA playoffs coming up around the corner, NHL playoffs coming around the corner. Major League Baseball after preseason, the regular season going to be starting up, and so much more. Sportsbooks, when it comes to parlay and single bets and more, they've got you covered on it. Plus, casino games for your entertainment. This is why BetUS has been great at it for 3 years. So give BetUS a try. Link is in the description at BetUS.com. Sign up now and tell them Jake the Snake sent you. $50 deposit or more for 200% bonus with 30 risk-free bets. That's BetUS.com. BetUS, where the game begins.
Listen up, sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases. Robert Lyle hosts Between the Lines podcast, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Don't lose your seat today when you use SeatGeek, the most trustworthy ticketing app on the market. Use promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off of your purchases when you choose SeatGeek for your next event, your next concert, to seeing your favorite artist, and so much more. With the most trustworthy ticketing app on the market, download on your mobile device or go online to SeatGeek.com. SeatGeek.com, promo code SNAKESPORTS. Apologize to everybody too. We've had so much stuff going on that I I really am excited for what, the NFL season is really going to be. And at the same time, the draft, I have been looking into a lot of these players, and I've looked into their draft profiles. I've looked into their film, and I've also watched them on their combine. And I know a lot of people don't really care too much for the NFL combine, but to me, I think it's very good informational stuff, and it's important. And I think at the same time, you look at a lot of a lot of players you thought you never really had seen before. So I think this was interesting, and I think this was fun, to really kind of bring this up. So my first ever top 10, as we'll be introducing here more on the show. So I've got my NFL top 10 draftees. This is not my mock draft, guys. These are just draftees who I honestly think are going to make serious noise from here. And I'll have a top 10 as well, because the NHL trade deadline is tomorrow. I'm excited about it. And so I'll give you my top 10 NHL teams as well the next time around. But without further ado, here we go with our top 10, and we are going to start at number 10.
Number 10. Number 10.
All right, so my number 10 draftee to watch for is a guy that I really do like, Jalen Wright from Tennessee. I think the kid is explosive to many degrees. And I think, for me personally, watching the build that he has and the speed at Tennessee, the guy is relentless. He's got great explosiveness when he's given the ball. And he's somebody that also looks for any of the given holes that he has. And so I think the kid coming out of the draft, not a lot of people have paid attention to him, but he ran a really good solid 40. And he is somebody that, even with his size and his build, this is going to be a low-key running back I would keep an eye on. Jalen Wright is his name. This kid's going to be interesting. And usually in the SEC, there is a lot of really good gems that are up out there. So I have him at number 10.
Number 9.
Number 9 draftee that I really do enjoy watching, and I talked about him, is Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo. This guy is going to be a serious ball hawk coming out of the draft. I think he's going to be this year's Tariq Woolen. His size and also his speed, but he is very much a threat against the offense, because not this year, but the past year, he had 5 interceptions. With the amount of pass blocks that he also produced as well in the last few years, he is a low-key corner that I would not, to any extent, want to even have anything to do with this kid coming out of the draft. I think he'll be a big-time ball hawk. I kind of figure late first round, maybe a second rounder at best. But I like Quinion Mitchell. He's my guy to look at number 9.
Number 8.
Number 8 is a kid from Texas that I think really, really stuffs up against the run, and that's Byron Murphy. So this kid, his size and his build, and what Texas was able to produce. They've had a really, really good year against the run, and is also one that they are not afraid to get to the quarterback. Byron Murphy is something else. From his size to his athleticism and his IQ, I think the kid really can be a run disruptor for any team that's looking for an absolute run defense. And Byron Murphy, he's been set around the league between the Raiders and multiple teams that are looking for a very good, solid interior D lineman. I think Byron Murphy is a name to really look out for here in this draft.
Number 7.
7, because I looked at a lot of offensive linemen, and I think Alu Fashanu is one guy I would keep an eye on. Listen, I know I like Joe Alt as well out of Notre Dame, but if you look into the draft grade for Alu Fashanu and then his build and his size and his athleticism, the kid is great. This is a good year for tackles, and if you're the Jets and you're a couple teams that need an offensive lineman that's solid, that gives you really good quality blocks, Fashanu's a guy to really keep an eye on. I mean, a 300-pounder. Listen, aside from Mekhi Becton, this kid is healthy. His offensive line grade, if you looked at how comfortable in the pocket Drew Aller was at Penn State, the kid was absolutely strong, provides a clean pocket, and is one that for the Jets and for multiple teams that are looking for a left tackle, I would look at Alu Fashanu. But again, I would not steer away from Joe Alt either.
Number 6.
6, this was a kid that a lot of people have not talked about, and it's the quarterback from Tennessee, Joe Milton. I think he's going to be a late rounder because here's the thing I like about Joe Milton. So in the combine, he threw the hardest ball out of the accuracy challenge, and he's also a big-time deep ball threat. So Joe Milton, if teams can't seem to find the quarterback that they are looking for, Joe Milton is not a bad option. He's capable of throwing the deep ball, and because of how hard and accurate he throws from the accuracy, that means he can throw in tight windows. And it's accurate. It's also very precise. I think that if you put him on a team where it's a healthy offensive line and they've got weapons, they may go and get another. I think Joe Milton would definitely be a guy I would look out for here in the draft at number 6.
Number 5.
Here, and I think he is the real deal when it comes to being the edge rusher on the team, and that's Laiatu. When I watched his highlights at UCLA, in that game against USC and Caleb Williams, the kid was relentless. He's athletic, he's strong, and he is not afraid to whoever has the ball, whether it's the quarterback or it's the running back, he's an absolute offensive stuffer. And Latu, there's been many teams that have been bringing up his name. I mean, the Rams could definitely use an edge rusher. I think the Falcons could definitely use an edge rusher, but there are many teams that are up out there. And if you're looking for a quality edge rusher, nothing against Jared Verse, but I look at Laiatu. This guy is not afraid to go up and test a lot of offensive lines. I think he will very much be a offensive disruptor, and he will be an absolute force, not to even tamper with at that point at number 5.
Number 4.
4 here on the list, I've got my guy Brock Bowers. I have been very, very just hyped about his athleticism and his strength at tight end. Many people are skeptical about it because of his injury history. Listen, you think it was easy for Rob Gronkowski or Travis Kelce? A lot of these big-time tight ends that are very dynamic, that their injury history, how it was. Listen, the difference with Brock Bowers than many other tight ends that we've seen in the last few years, he's very strong, he's athletic, and he's also somebody that is very capable and dependable getting open. I think, honestly, I mean, the Chargers are at number 5. And many people are either thinking it's Malik Neighbors or it could be Brock Bowers. I think, honestly, the Chargers pass on Brock Bowers, that's a big mistake because they have not been dynamic at tight end since Antonio Gates. And this kid is the real deal when it comes to a secondary blocker in the line and a secondary receiver with great hands. I think he does need a little bit of help when it comes to route running skills, but I think this kid is the real deal. I have him at number 4.
Number 3.
Another playmaker who I think is going to be very relentless is Malik Neighbors. Now, he comes from wide receiver university, LSU. They are so notorious for building up big-time wide receivers at that position, and I think he's the real deal. I think he is honestly everything that you would look for. Now, it's very tempting for many teams. The Chargers, but the other thing is, too, Chicago is interesting because if they're going to draft Caleb Williams, there is also a possibility that they could potentially trade up in their secondary pick in the first round and maybe going and getting a solid weapon. It either would be Malik Neighbors or the one that I've got up at number 2. But I think Neighbors, he has great hands, he's got great explosiveness, and he's also responsible for the Heisman year that Jaden Daniels has. I think the kid is too hard to pass up. The only thing that I think he really needs to work on, getting a little bit more savvy in his route runs, but he's great with yards after the catch, and he's great when it comes to contested plays. I have him at number 3.
Number 2.
Was an interesting one, but I love his work ethic, and that is Roma Dunze. I think this kid is going to be a low-key, and now, listen, many people that do not come from either LSU or Georgia or anywhere else, I know a lot of people have skepticism when it comes to, well, he's from Washington, but here's the thing. What makes him such a great draft prospect is that, number one, he always strives to want to get better. And he wants to get better at his position. If you watched him in the combine, he was pissed off at the time that he had when it came to route running. But he is willing to get better. He is very strong against contested throws. But he's also somebody that could be a huge scoring machine. And I think up to that point, Roma Dunze, I mean, you look at Chicago, you look at Tennessee, you look at a lot of different teams that are going to need an offensive weapon. I think between Neighbors and Odunze looks to be the real deal next to Malik Neighbors. But I mean, I like it. I like the pick there from number 2, and I will show you exactly what number 1, who's going to be the absolute threat.
Number 1.
That really does catch up to me, and his draft stock is not a fluke, and that's J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. The reason J.J. McCarthy is as good as a lot of, honestly, I'm seeing it from my own eyes. J.J. McCarthy, what do people not like about him? I'm really curious. If you think about it, he comes from a Michigan program that's fresh off of a natty. But J.J. McCarthy has NFL caliber skills because he's learned from the best of them all, and that's Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh's got NFL experience. Listen, if you put him in a Denver offense with Sean Payton, that's now 2 really good coaches that he would be coached by. And J.J. McCarthy, he is a gamer. He is also a winner. He brings a winning mentality because that's all he wants to win. That's all he wants to do is win. He doesn't care about accolades. He doesn't care about stats. He cares about winning. And he is the kind, next to Joe Milton in the accuracy, he can throw in tight windows. He's also capable of going deep as well on the long ball when it is safe to do so. He's smart at it. But he gave his receiver list that he would love to throw to. Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, I'd be giving a call, and I'd be taking him if he's available. If I'm the Raiders, you can't get Jaden Daniels. This is another one that is a great, great option. But I think his work ethic and his athleticism is not a fluke. I think this kid is the real deal, and a lot of people, I don't understand what media seems to be bashing on him. People are thinking, he's overrated. I don't think he's all that. Look, I watched with my own eyes. And I've also watched the combine. I've watched more film. I think the kid is a lot more than some people tend to think that he is. And I like him there up at number 1. Man, there's a lot to really break down, but those are exactly the draftees I would keep an eye on. I'm excited for all 10 of these guys, and I do think that they are going to be an absolute brute force coming into the draft. Really excited for what's to come. But, I mean, honestly, this is one that you pay for. So I think in many different ways. I think this kid is exactly like, I mean, J.J. McCarthy is everything that you want as an NFL caliber quarterback. I mean, he's won in college. He's had a legendary coach in Jim Harbaugh that if you put him in Denver with Sean Payton, he'll have 2, and it works. And J.J. McCarthy is capable of throwing in tight windows. He's capable of making the accurate throws. I don't see what the problem is. So I think he's the real deal. I think he's one that I would very much keep a strong eye on. But again, I mean, Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors, they are very dynamic receivers. And you're going to see a lot of wide receivers get taken this year because there's not a bad one. I think the only one that I'm a little skeptical of is Xavier Worthy. But lots of these receivers that I'm seeing in this draft there's many options. Keon Coleman, Adonai Jackson. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I think are going to be really fun to watch. Adonai Mitchell. This is it, guys. This is literally going to be the most stacked free agency and draft I think I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen this for the longest time. I think this is going to be great. I think it's going to be fun to watch, and I can't wait for it. I'm got my popcorn. I'm ready to watch this. I'm really excited about it moving forward. So appreciate you guys for coming up onto the show. Shout out to my man Hammer at Hammer's House. Loved the interview. Loved him stopping on by, talking a little bit about Raiders talk and what to expect in the draft. Absolutely loved it. If you guys haven't done so already, like, follow, and subscribe, and hit the bell button to keep you up to date on future shows. You don't want to miss out. We've got lots more interviews to come up next week. We've got a couple of them that are very, very entertaining. Got a really good friend of mine. I could definitely have a UFC fighter coming on next week. I'm really excited about that. But we've got so much more to get ourselves geared up on. Top 10 NHL teams post-trade deadline. I will have that next week. I'm excited about that. So you don't want to end up missing out on the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. This is Jake Silva signing off. A great rest of your night, and we will see you on the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care of each other. Enjoy it, and we will see you the next episode. Take care, guys.